Hi there, neighbors. Welcome to Neighborhood Comics, 1205 Bull Street, Savannah, Georgia. You can find us online on all the social media platforms at NBRHD Comics. We're coming coming to you live tonight from the shop. Happy to be here. My name is Lee, one of the owners here, and welcome back to our Creator Conversations. Tonight, we've got two fantastic guests, and I'm really excited to get them on. But first, tell you a little bit about our other business we've got going on. The first thing is you can now find us on Pop Shop Live. Pop Shop Live is a really interesting social shopping and kind of community app available for iOS. You can also follow along with the show in your web browser if you're not an Apple ecosystem person. And we are doing lots of really fun, interesting things there at Pop Shop. So if you are not local, if you haven't been in the shop, it really kind of feels like you're here in the shop. We have a lot of fun, lots of sales, lots of interesting stuff that you can't find anywhere else that we're putting on Pop Shop Live. Check it out. If you do download the app or you're looking for us on the website, use code NCOMIC, NCOMIC. Oh my God, it is late. NCOMIC, and you will find us and be able to follow us there. It's a ton of fun. Our next show is this coming Tuesday at 8:00 p.m. Eastern. All right. As always, support the show. You can go to neighborhoodcomics.com. You can shop our whole store there. Lots of fun stuff, including the book we're going to be talking about tonight. So to help me talk about this book, I have a very special guest who is a friend of the store, Dr. Katy Smith, who's assistant professor of geology at Georgia Southern, and whose PhD major was in geology with an emphasis in vertebrate paleontology, and whose dissertation title was Life Histories of Female American Mastodons, Evidence from Tusk Morphology, Stable Isotope Records, and Growth Increments. I'm sure I did all of that right. Welcome to the show, friend of the shop. We're doing a countdown here for Dr. Katy Smith. Hey.
Hi, I have not heard that title in a long time.
Really? You don't get the full, like, every time you show up? That's not like, it's not on your press badge?
Somehow, no.
Thank you so much for being here. You know,
of course.
I mentioned that Katy is known to the store. She's a friend of the store. And early on, when I found out that you worked in this field, I feel like there's something that really sparks like a real childhood thing, because I think so many people of my generation and all the way through to my daughters have this real romantic idea of paleontology, of research, and of studying these animals that no longer exist. What was that path like for you? Was it something that as a kid you were really drawn to and you just followed that through, or did it come later on once you kind of already got involved in academic science?
No, I'm one of those kids that always loved dinosaurs, and I cannot think of a time in my life that I didn't want to be a paleontologist. Like I told my kindergarten teacher that's what I wanted to be, and so I kept going from there. So it's just kind of been a lifelong thing. My parents used to take me to the museum where I grew up in Milwaukee a lot, and I just loved the fossil hall. That was my favorite part, and just looking at all the dinosaurs and everything else that was there. I just loved it. And so then when I got older, I just pursued that path through education.
And you're in the academia side of it now, where you're teaching and working with young people. Do you ever get a chance to go out and do field work anymore? I mean, current
Once
COVID
in
times,
a while.
exempted.
Yeah, so I don't like to let kids down too much, but I don't do a ton of field work.
Yeah.
I work a lot in museum collections, but I have had the chance to do field work. There was a whale in Georgia that I worked on several years ago that we're finally getting, or at least trying to get a paper out on. But yeah, so I haven't done a ton of field work, but I've done that. I've worked at the Mammoth site in Springs, South Dakota. I was an intern there 15, 16 years ago, maybe longer. And so definitely out there. And then just kind of occasional random things. One that I like to bring up was during grad school, I helped to excavate a mammoth from a golf course in Michigan. So that was a lot of fun. That was an interesting site to be on.
Well, your dissertation work was specific to mastodons. Your Twitter handle is dr_mastodona. Is that right?
Mhm.
Did I get it right?
That's right.
And it's so great because you're a wonderful follow. It's a lot of fun. But then you also start to see all of these other like academics and professionals that you work with who all have their own little handles that are cute takes on ground sloths or whatever,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden there's this rabbit hole that you go down, which is a lot of fun. And I'm sure that community is really supportive and a blast.
It really is. I mean, when I joined Twitter, I did it primarily to keep up with sports. I wanted to keep up with the Milwaukee Brewers, and then I found paleontology Twitter, and it's been awesome.
Well, when you find paleontology TikTok, you just let me know because I'm sure it exists. I am sure it is there. There's
It
a
probably
corner.
does.
I'm positive it does. I'm not gonna go digging for it. But oh God, I promise
Someday I'll look.
I won't keep doing like puns about. Anyway, no, I'm making no promises. I probably will keep doing that this entire time. The book that we're here today to talk about is called Mammal Takeover, and this book is specific to the Cenozoic era. What should we, our collective audience, know about the Cenozoic as kind of some touchstones, Katy?
Sure. So we can think about the Cenozoic. We should first think about the timing of it. We are currently in the Cenozoic, and it started 65 million years ago after the extinction of the dinosaurs. So when we're talking about the Cenozoic, we don't have any dinosaurs in the way of dinosaurs that we think of them. We do know that birds are dinosaurs, so I don't want to get too into specifics, but so non-avian or non-bird dinosaurs went extinct at that point. And so we can look at, my favorite topic then, the evolution of mammals. Mammals did evolve before the Cenozoic, but they really diversified when we hit the Cenozoic. And so just looking at a little bit of the book, we're looking at different epochs within the Cenozoic. And my favorite epoch is the Pleistocene, which is our last major ice age. And that's where you're going to find things like my favorite mastodon and mammoths and, a lot of the other animals that were in the movie Ice Age, just kind of simplify it.
My favorite mastodon sounds like a 1950s like TV sitcom. I would totally watch My Favorite Mastodon.
I would.
And I think this is a great time to bring on Abby Howard, who is joining us. So Abby is the artist, illustrator, author of Mammal Takeover. It's part of the Earth Before Us series of science comics. And we're going to bring Abby in right now. There's going to be a 3, 2, 1 countdown. Yay, we did it. Technology.
Hello.
Hey, Abby, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So Mammal Takeover came out a couple of years ago, but next week, so a week from today, the 14th of April, 2021, the paperback edition is released. There it is. There's the super flexy cover. We saw it. It's a for real paperback. And so that's what we're having Abby and Katy on here today, is to kind of to celebrate that book getting back out into comic stores and bookstores, and for people being able to find it and to enjoy this work that Abby has spent so much time and effort putting in. And it is a really, really fun book. I think that there is some trepidation, like the idea that a science comic might be dry, or sure, I'm sure you could make anything dry and boring, but the illustrations are so fun in this book. I'm going to pull up a couple of things and we'll just kind of like talk through or look at while we're talking about other things too. But just full of life. Of course, I'm going to make puns, bad puns, extinct life. And just like I'll pull it solo on so that it comes up the full screen. There we go. Really, really bright, fun. You have kind of young people as avatars who lead you through these different animals, lead you through these different descriptions and discussions. These 2-page spreads are just gorgeous.
Oh,
Love the
thank you.
color, love the line work. And while you can see that there's, they're talking, it's not just graphs and, statistics. There's plenty of that in the world for kids to latch onto, but come on, the rainbow spectrum of wonderful mammals of the Holocene. Come on, this is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a lot of fun. And I was talking to Abby earlier that here in the store, we get a lot of parents and young people in particular who are really advanced readers, who are beyond maybe the things that are designed for them on the age descriptors on the back of the books. And nonfiction and specifically science comics are a really great pickup for those kids because they are still able to be engaged and challenged, but it's appropriate content for them to learn and to grow and hopefully find something that they're really excited about. But Abby, I'm just talking and asking questions. One of my favorite things to ask when it comes to talking with creators is I like to find out a little bit about your history and kind of how you came to working in the comics industry. So do you remember a time when you were younger in that kind of you had that first exposure to what we would consider to be comics, whether it was like the actual physical medium or something else?
Yeah, I mean, I always read newspaper comics, so that was a huge fascination of mine. I always wanted to be able to do something like that. So through at like age 10, it was all about newspaper comics. And then I found graphic novels and I was like, yes, this is what I want to do because I love telling stories, but I also love drawing pictures. So for the longest time, I thought, well, one day I'll tell stories, but I'll put pictures in it, of course. But I was assuming like, full page illustrations, not, oh, I could just make the whole thing pictures and dialogue, all of my favorite parts. So from then on, my goal was basically to just be a cartoonist one day. So I worked very hard at it. All through high school, I kept pitching graphic novel ideas to publishers who, of course, were like, no, I can tell you're like 13. So yeah, it didn't work out, but eventually it did. A few years into university, I wound up actually on I started posting my comics online because I was making them, so I might as well put them somewhere. And I wound up on a web reality show called Strip Search for web cartoonists specifically. There was only one season. I just lucked out. I happened to have maybe 20 comics up online to point to say, yes, I'm a cartoonist. And they liked it enough that they took a chance on me, and I was the runner-up. And then launched my comic career after that because it gave me enough kind of online attention that people were reading my comics. So
what an amazing story. That's so cool. Like you're the first reality show contestant that I've had answer that question, because a lot of them really have just kind of boiled down to, well, I know somebody, there's that kind of thing. I did the work, I was building my portfolio, and then this person gave me a shot or whatever. And in a way it's still that, but with a very big twist that there was a entertainment component to it. So like when you were young, like when you were 13, like you already had that sense, that knowledge that this is something people do for work, And so what were those graphic novels? Do you remember what those kind of first ones were that really grabbed you at that age?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, the ones I read, not the ones that I was writing.
Not those. No, yeah.
We don't need to speak of those.
Let's read those.
Yeah. Johnny the Homicidal Maniac was a big one for me.
Sure.
I loved Invader Zim growing up, so it was kind of a natural progression for me to find his more gross work. So that one, you would think I would have a list. Courtney Crumford was a big one for me. I really loved that series. I highly recommend it for anybody who is a teenager and loves supernatural stuff, or is an adult and loves supernatural stuff. And other ones.
Yeah, no, of course. And
Yeah.
You're not the first person by far to talk about the newspaper strips, and that was kind of the way it was for me too, honestly, is that, we were getting the paper and the paper was so boring, but then, hey, there were these 3 little things just on a regular weekday paper that were 3 to 5 panels, and they told this little story, and they were kind of funny and had funny looking kids in them or whatever. What were those strips at that time? Do you remember any of those that were kind of made an impact?
Absolutely. Leo was a big one for me. Calvin and Hobbes, naturally. And I mean, I read everything that was in the paper. I liked Pearls Before Swine. It had simple art, and it was kind of more like what grown-ups might like, jokes for grown-ups. So I felt like a cool guy when I figured out what the joke was. So.
I think as an adult, Pearls Before Swine, I had to like have somebody help me figure out what some of those punchlines were. But I could see it was like, especially as a kid, like anything that looks like it could possibly be for you is so exciting in that kind of a format that where the rest of it is not for you, you know?
Yeah. Newspapers where there's a page that is something you can read and enjoy.
Right
you can
next
sit
to
at the table with your parents reading the newspaper and be like, yes, me too. I also am reading the newspaper.
And then you could read them the weather because it inevitably was right next to the cartoons, the back page. So, that's awesome. And so when you were creating, you were really kind of self-motivated in so many ways. And then finding your way through college to start that process of becoming a professional in the biz. At that point, like, or early on, or I guess even as the process kind of expanded, how did you find your way into this very specific, like doing science, like doing educational work? Was that something we're following with a publisher or just kind of one of those happy circumstances?
So you mentioned earlier figuring out that graphic novels were a career. I actually, even while pitching, did not think it was something that was a viable career. I had heard it did not pay much and that it was uncertain work. So it was kind of like I would love to do this, but I guess I need to do something more professional. So I actually wound up going to school for evolutionary biology. So
well, all right.
Why I got into at first it was just going to be pre-med, but then it turns out I'm very bad at chemistry, but I'm very good at learning about animals. So that's what I wound up doing. I actually went on a dinosaur dig while I was in school. So I have some experience with that sort of thing, very minor experience, but still some. So that's where I picked up a lot of my baseline knowledge. And then I just felt like I needed to share it. So once I got an agent, it was the first thing I wanted to pitch was a series where it was exactly what I would have wanted as a kid, where it's just like these big spreads full of animals that just shows like a huge kind of swath of what life would have been like at the time, what sort of animals you would just see walking around.
I love this. Like in my head, I had this whole headcanon where you just were like picked up and they're like, oh, here's this project. Let's slot this person in. This is about the fact that there is a real history and a real passion, not just from that idea of being a kid who likes dinosaurs, but also carrying on through your educational process to be like, oh no, I have some bones to kind of put. I did it again. I said bones. I've got some skills to put behind some reference. I've got some history here. Oh, history. Okay, stop it. Then we can do this. So I love that. That's fantastic. Speaking of those big spreads, like I said, I was a dinosaur kid. I think a lot of us were. I had this crazy book as a kid that was a Goodwill find called Life Before Man. I'll find this and bring it in, Katie, so you can see it sometime. But it was probably done in the 50s. It was like a 50s textbook, and it's all like clay models. And so it's photographs of these clay models of dinosaurs and whatnot. Insane things that now I'm sure the scientific community agrees either never existed or if it did, looked nothing like that. So that idea of having a modern visual encyclopedia of this in a more fun way, like in a not so just segmented off into little boxes and panels, but to have these spreads that are so bright and fun, I found to be really interesting and exciting about this book in particular, which is rad.
Well, thank you. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, you did it. Katie, as someone who does this for a living, right? Like someone who has these different elements that obviously you know about through education and that you're transferring being teaching and you have in field work. When you see something like this being produced, like what kind of emotions does it bring up, or how do you feel like it contributes to that continuing education of younger people?
Oh yeah, so I love this kind of book. I'm always excited when I see something about this, especially when it's something that is mammal based. But I do enjoy dinosaurs too. But I like it a lot because it helps. It helps to kind of bring the animals to life for my students. So I teach a course that's called Dinosaurs, Extinctions, and Disasters. And it's a course that's for non-science majors or for everybody, basically. So I can have people in there who haven't taken a single college science course, but they just thought, okay, dinosaurs are kind of fun. Let's check this out. And because I'm a mammal person, we definitely do Ice Age stuff in there too, and some other mammals. But I'm always looking for art to show what different depictions of extinct animals are like. And so when I see this kind of stuff, I just think this is a treasure trove for me. And my students are going to be seeing pictures from this for a long time, because it's just, one thing that I always try to get across is that we might be studying bones, but these are all living animals. They all lived at one time. They were real. And when you put the flesh on them and you see them in their habitats, then they really do. That really comes forward that these are not just dusty old bones. These are something real and amazing.
And there's something really fun about that too, when they are like, they have those softer edges that a cartoony style, like it's almost more, it's obviously more approachable in that way, because it is, again, not looking at it from that strict scientific illustration lens, but looking at it for something more of a pop culture lens, like, because I'm sure, Abby, you're pulling from all of your influences in illustration, whether that's, I see, is that a Pokemon behind you? So whether it's like
Digimon, actually.
Digimon. Oh no, my street cred is busted. But whether it's anime, or whether it is those cartoon, like the comic strip panels and all those different things that you've taken in as an artist over the years and then put back out with your own kind of spin on it. What is that process like for you to be both, I guess, realistic in a way that you have to convey these animals that don't exist anymore, but also being able to imbue them with some of the personality and some of the fun that you've added to them?
So I get this question sometimes, and the answer is I'm not amazing at drawing realistic things. So it's kind of just a default, where this is just as good as I could do. Especially with the time limit that I had. I had a year to work on each of these books, and that is not a lot of time to research, write, illustrate, and color an entire book. So it was a lot of work, and I kind of couldn't get too precious with any of them. And a lot of them don't have, I usually, like, if I get more realistic, it's usually because I work from a reference, but it's not like there are references for a lot of these animals, especially the stuff where basically all I have is bones, and I have to put the flesh on the bones. So at that point, it's like, all right, well, I kind of think its face might have looked like this. I will not try to make it look any more realistic in case I am wrong.
So you've done, is it 2 of the books in this series so far?
3. Here, let me hold them all up. So I have the first one in the series is Dinosaur Empire. Of course, it's about dinosaur times, naturally. Yeah. Then I have Ocean Renegades, which is about the time before the dinosaurs, which is a really fun one. I like this one a lot because I don't think I had ever seen a kid's book, for one thing, focusing only on that time. And of course, to have all of these cool spreads. Let me show you my favorite one.
I'm so glad you're talking about that, because when I was looking at the other books that you did, I was like, oh my gosh, she did a book on the Paleozoic. Like, that is just wonderful.
So here's the whole Cambrian.
Oh, yeah.
Nice spread.
That's the stuff right there.
Yeah.
And I actually, so I'm so glad you mentioned those, because I've bought all of those for my nephews. I'm like, oh, those are all Abby's books. Okay, great.
Yeah, I really like this one because it's just such a strange time, and it's really fun to write about. It's really fun to draw. I love ancient amphibians a lot, so that was really, really fun. And then, of course, the third book in the series, The Time After the Dinosaurs, which I knew the least about, actually, when I went into it. So...
Is that pretty common, Katie, do you think? Like, is that kind of an era that doesn't, obviously there's something about giant reptiles that spikes excitement from kids and that sort of thing. because they're used to seeing little lizards and they're, running around, but not giant ones. We have elephants, we have large cats, that exist in the world. Today, obviously not the same, but do you feel like that kind of hurts that kind of, interest in that era a little bit, or no?
Oh, yeah. So I think that in terms of the Cenozoic, Ice Age animals are fairly well known. I mean, people typically know what mammoths are. There's certainly a bunch in there that are usually very surprising to people as well. But if you go a little bit back into the Cenozoic, there's all these really, really crazy looking animals that no one's ever heard of, and they look like you've made them up. When I teach my mammals class, it's usually start paleontology of mammals. I usually start the class by putting in pictures of some real mammals, and then I'll pull in like some animals from sci-fi or something like that and make the students guess which ones are real and which ones aren't. And they don't get them all because there are some really bizarre ones out there. And at some of the stills that Abby sent us, there's definitely some really bizarre ones in there, and some that people don't know anything about. Oh my gosh. Yes, they are amazing. Some of those, I mean, they're so big that they could be temporary shelters for people. Some of them were that big. So, and they just, they're also adorable, but look at the big club tail on that one. I think that's Doedicurus.
I love, because this is what saves me, is the pronunciation guides. Come on. I need that.
I love that too. I'm bad at pronouncing them too, and I'm a professional paleontologist. So.
And something I found while working on these books is that, I was in school for a bit, so I did see some of this in action. Some people definitely have different pronunciations for some of these things, and they'll email you about it. Be like, actually, this is a typo. And it's like, well, that's how I heard it pronounced a few times in person. So I guess it's anyone's game. Who knows?
Unless the animal said it in front of you, I think that we just have to go with what's established. But from a real outsider in this, one thing that I'm always super surprised by, and I think as I try to kind of keep as a hobbyist one ear to what's going on in paleontology and to discoveries, is how many variations on these animals that there are. Like, I think back when the Brontosaurus was a thing, I'm going to date myself here, and now by analyzing hip bones, we now know that what was originally kind of all thrown in this one bin were actually 5 or 6 different animals, that we're starting to kind of differentiate. And that one panel we were just looking at, where we have the Glyptodon and these other animals that all have some of these shared characteristics that we can kind of trace down to armadillos now and that sort of thing, maybe. I found to be really interesting that, we talk about evolution being this really slow thing, but when we talk about these eras, we make it sound like it's a compressed amount of time and that they were all hanging out, and some of them did hang out together, but it really was, we're talking about a long period of time about how these evolutions in these animals, how they changed features, and eventually some of them morphed into the animals that we had today. So with a panel like the one that we've got up now, Abby, kind of walk me through this one a little bit in terms of putting these animals together and how they show scale, and maybe a little bit about just kind of what your thinking was about how putting this grouping together made a lot of sense.
So the animal grouping depends on the book, the region, and the time period.
Yeah.
And even then, it's not fully accurate, because I do have a few spreads in this where I had to group together like New Zealand and Australia, because I wanted to include certain animals that I really liked, but they didn't probably actually hang out together. So I tried to keep them a little bit separate. But that's kind of the best I could do sometimes, because I had only 100, like had to be 128 pages. So. Yeah. And I just had to cram all these guys in there.
There's no more room for history. History has to fit in 128 pages.
That's the rule. So with this, I would kind of start with like a list of all of the animals that lived in a certain era. I would kind of group them into like regions and time periods, and just go from there and flesh it out and try to fit them on a page such that they made sense which is very difficult, and then put my little people in there as a scale, which that was a huge sticking point for me. I wanted to have these little characters walking through the whole world so that you could really get a feel for it, because I feel like so often in these books you just kind of see the pictures of the giant things and you're like, so that's like the skyscraper size, right? Like I feel like a lot of kids see something like a T-Rex and are just like, oh yeah, that's like as big as a house. But having little people there, one who's like child-sized and one who's adult-sized, who's supposed to be like, normal scale, it was a big thing for me. And I wanted to draw, my little persona in there too, so that I could hang out with those ancient animals as well. So getting the size right was difficult though.
I'm sure.
Oh gosh, like sometimes, something like Titanoboa, when it's all curled up like that, that's what you're showing right now, Titanoboa. Yeah. I have no idea. Like, I have a snake. It's very hard for me to tell how long my snake is. She's all curled up. She's 4.5 feet, but when she's all curled up, she's like this big. So I had no idea how big Titanoboa should be here, like compared to a person and that sort of thing. It was very difficult. And also some people like to say that certain animals are very big. They're just like, yeah, I bet this thing could get up to like 70 feet long, whatever, for sure. I did some math. And maybe that's true. So, yeah, you kind of have to use your best judgment sometimes to just be like, well, let's just kind of pick the size that seems a little bit more reasonable for an animal. So.
And you also had the benefit of this not being a textbook. This is something that is really meant to like excite and to animate and to like get people started on this path of discovery and that sort of thing. Now, whenever I talk to creators that do all the work on a book, that are scripting the book, that are illustrating the book, that are putting that all together, I don't think I've talked to anyone who is doing like kind of strict nonfiction. Of course, there's a framework with the characters and everything that you're using here. But with doing these books, you're writing the script first and then putting everything together. What is that like in terms of not having a regular collaborator, or are you able to work with editors? Are there other people that you bring in to collaborate along the way as you work?
I have editors, but that's after I send them the second draft or so. So all of the main stuff I have to put together myself. However, with something like this, especially with the framework around it of the two characters and how they get to the ancient world, that was very much kind of workshopped because I'm working, with a real publisher for a child audience. So it had to be like something appropriate for parents, I suppose. So my first draft probably was not appropriate for parents.
Well, the challenge in this, and it's not, 128 pages. I mean, that is, 6 issues of a serialized comic at this point, if you're thinking about it from just a regular monthly serial book. I mean, they're down to 20, 22 pages some months. And that's a lot of work. And you're doing that in a year, putting this all together and getting it out. That's insanely. And this is not the only thing that you're doing. So let's talk about that. So Abby has put together these books, the Mammal Takeover, the other 2 Life Before Us books we mentioned. We've got those that we stock here in the shop. Your favorite comic shop, your favorite bookstore will be able to get those for you guys too. But Abby, I'm really interested in what else you're doing because like any creator, you've got other projects that are in the hopper, and yours are pretty interesting because you are looking at not just these books, but other comics that you're working on, and as well as working in the video game space. So first, if you want to talk a little bit about the other comics that are maybe a little bit more personal that you're working on right now.
All right. So I have actually published 7 graphic novels to my name to this date. So thank you. My most recent book came out just last month, and that is The Crossroads at Midnight, which I'm very excited about. It's a book of 5 short horror comics, all written and illustrated by me. It's about 350 pages, and it's got good reviews. People say it's good, and that makes me very happy. And I have also, last year actually, The Last Halloween is an ongoing webcomic that I write and illustrate. And that got a collected reprint by Iron Circus Comics, and that came out last Halloween, which is also the name of the book. So that one's really fun. It's teens and up, so That one is a horror adventure comic, and I think people enjoy it. It also has good reviews. And oh, right, I'm working on a video game. My spouse and I are working on a video game called Scarlet Hollow. The first episode is currently free to play on Steam. So you can just go and download it right now, free of charge. And then episode 2 is coming out in May, and then we'll start charging for the full game in May. So that's what I'm working on right now. Every day I sit down, we write it together. So I've not sent off, we work in the same studio. So I sent the script over to Tony. Tony puts it into the game. I'm working on sprites and backgrounds right now. It's all hand drawn. So
wow.
Yeah, I'm just doing it all by hand at my desk with pens.
That is so cool. I'm so going to check that out. I think that's really exciting and interesting. I love that when you can bring something that feels like real people worked on it in that digital space in that way. I think it makes a big difference in terms of how you interact with it and how the story unfolds. And Katy, one of the big reasons, not only is Katy know all about, I'm setting you up again. Not only is Katy literally a doctor in with paleontology as a background, but Katy is also a big comic reader. And Katy, what are some of the books that you picked up recently that you've enjoyed and you'd like to mention to people to check out?
That's a great question. Yeah, I'm kind of a latecomer to the comic scene too. I didn't read one until I was like 35 or so, and then I kind of got hooked. So some of my favorites are horror comics, and my favorite all time is Lock and Key. I think most people who are in love with horror comics have already read that one. I really like stuff by Cullen Bunn, particularly Harrow County. That's some of my favorite stuff. What have I read recently? Oh, I have All These Perfect Crosses on my nightstand right now. I haven't read it yet. Not horror, of course, but
it's only 20 pages, Katy. Get on it.
I know, right? So those I really like. I like Rachel Rising is also, I'm working my way through the omnibus of that.
Terry Moore book. Yeah.
Yes. So
awesome.
Revival, that's a big one I loved too. So, I mean, I have quite a large shelf of some of the horror comics and some other comics too. It's funny that what you write is that you're Abby, is that you have horror comics and you have nonfiction comics, because that's really what's on my shelf, or nonfiction type things and like semi-autobiographical stuff. Like
I write that too. I have 2 collections of semi-autobiographical comics.
Nice, yeah, but yeah, things like now I'm gonna blank on all of the names. Is it called The Hunting Party? Oh, I don't have my shelf in here.
Sure, that's what it's called.
Things like that, biographical stories, and like March and stuff like that. So it's fun that that's what you like to write too. That's what I like to read. So I should have come across you much earlier.
We're fixing it all.
Yes.
Abby, what about you in terms of a reader? What are you picking up these days in the field of comics that you've enjoyed? Or it doesn't even have to be a newer title. It could be whatever you want to make sure people know is out there that you've really enjoyed.
I definitely want to plug. There's this cartoonist Skelehime. Definitely look up Skelehime's work. Skelehime. I am blanking on the name of the collection, but 1 second, I'm sure I can pull it up.
That's how it works.
Yeah. But it's a wonderful collection of horror comics. She does incredible work. Typo. So sorry. I'm sure this is fascinating for everybody.
No, all good.
Yep. I definitely recommend checking out her website, which is skelehime.com.
There we go.
Stanley Needs a Nest, I believe, is the collection that she did. So that one's really good. I love indie comics, so that's most of what I follow. Oh, Human Star is not like a horror, but it's a really wonderful sci-fi comic that I think is really nice. Those are 2 that come to mind.
Yeah, awesome. I
Really
definitely like being put on the spot where you have to call out your friends with like 5 seconds to go and prove all your cred. Yeah.
Iron Circus Comics is my publisher for Crossroads at Midnight and The Last Halloween. Basically, check out any of their work. Like cool. Their whole, it's wonderfully curated. So the publisher does a very good job picking stuff to publish. So
That's the real benefit of being a smaller publisher, is that you get to have that kind of relationship with the publisher as a creator. They get to really invest in you. And because they're only publishing a certain number of books, they get to put more behind them than a bigger publisher might be able to. So yeah, nice way to plug Iron Circus. There you go, Abby. You did it.
Yay.
That is awesome. So with doing all these kind of talks, I love to get all of the background, but I'm also really interested in that kind of what's on down the road. So, we talked about some immediate projects that you're working on, Abby. Like, do you have, like, if you're casting out that net 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, like, what is it that are either a dream project or something that you see yourself, like, currently on your way to?
Yeah, I've got a 10-year plan, all right.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, I definitely always come up with way more projects than I have time for. So currently I am working on, of course, the rest of our video game. Our video game is going to be 7 episodes. So Scarlet Hollow is going to finish probably in like 3 years or so. We're going to release an episode every 6 months or so. And after that, I'm going to take some time to finish my ongoing webcomic, The Last Halloween. So it has 2 more books left. I'm about almost maybe halfway through book 2. So I would love to just sit down and really crank it out, spend all of my time on that. And then I have a horror romance I would like to write. And I have, let's see, I'm about to be part of an anthology next year, probably. So I have that on my plate as well. Some short comics here and there, and probably another video game with my spouse. We have a title and kind of a plot for it. So also in the horror genre for sure. But that's kind of where I'm headed.
I am exhausted, Abby, just listening to hear. Like, I remember being young and having plans. That is awesome. Katy, what about you? Obviously, working in your field in academia, there are lots of, I'm sure, different professional goals that you have to work to. But is there any kind of bucket list type thing that you would want to hit, either as a part of your field or creatively, or anything else like that?
Bucket list. Oh boy, that's a hard one. There's so many great fossil sites out there. I think I'll just think in the near future. I've been doing some work with the Western Science Center out in Hemet, California. And I'm looking at the mastodons there. And they had recently published a paper that named a new species of mastodon, which is really exciting because there was only one in North America during the Ice Age. So now there are 2. So one of the things that I'm looking at are the mastodons that are out west, going to places like La Brea. I've only ever been there as a tourist. I'm hoping to go there as a researcher, and that kind of ties in with the big project there. So that would be really exciting. I've done some research in South Africa, and I want to go back there when I can travel again. They have great fossil elephants there. So it's a lot of fun. So, I mean, anywhere there's really good fossil elephants and their extinct relatives, that's where I want to be.
You wasted a perfectly great chance to say to.
Yeah, right.
You would never. You were an actual real professional.
And name it after me. That would be. I would be honored.
You're a real professional person. You would never actually say that. As speaking as my 8-year-old self, let me tell you, that's the first move is to lobby and cajole to get that skeleton named after you for that new.
Good goal. Good goal.
There you go. Don't want to tell all your peers that's your goal, but that's your goal. Good deal. Abby, people can follow you online on Twitter and specific at Abby Howard, ABBYHOWARD. I get that right? Sweet. Good. I'm going off the dome for this. So thanks. You also have a website where you've got your work as well, where people can go check out your portfolio with some of the work that you've done. You've got, I think, a Tumblr out there in the world. So yeah, there's lots of great places to go check out Abby. But as a comic retailer, let me tell you, the best place to go do that is at your local comic shop. Let them know that you're interested in Abby's books, either the science comics like Mammal Takeover that we've talked about today, or the Iron Circus work, or with a lot of comic shops, you can just let them know that you have favorite creators, and they can put together a customized pull list or hold list or subscription list, depending on what that shop calls it, to find books by those creators for you. So that way you can not only follow established things that you like, but you can also follow along with different creators who you like the work that they do. So Abby, thank you so much for taking time, for joining us from Boston today and then on to the Great White North in short order. And Katy, it's always so wonderful to see you. I don't see you enough in the store. So
no, you haven't been there the last couple of times I've gone. So
such a busy person, Katy. I have so much going on. I literally have so much liquor. There's nothing going on. I have nothing going on. But I've missed you. So we're looking forward to soon having events in the store again. I've already got my wish list of concerts, so we'll get you back here for some people for sure, Katy.
Yes.
And Abby, I know you're moving farther away from us, but should life ever bring you to Savannah, know you've got an invitation to come here and sign some books and smile at people and talk about mastodons and ground sloths and those weird armadillo-looking things.
Thank you very much for having me. It was nice to meet both of you, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Of course. Mammal Takeover available starting next week at your favorite local bookstore, comic book store, wherever you get your good stuff. Thank you so much, guys. Stay well, everybody. Keep reading comics. We'll see you in the store soon. Stay well.
All right. Bye.
bye.